with real delight and great admiration that I present the second annual Robert and Andrew Award for Documentary Excellence to filmmaker Kim Longinotto. Her films are so real, so powerful, so human. For more than 30 years, Kim and her camera have taken us to places which society too often averts its eyes. Drug abuse and prostitution, child molestation, female circumcision, and really almost all manner of exploitation, especially of women. In these places, Kim makes films that truly give voice to the voiceless, but without bludgeoning the viewer with advocacy. Her films are raw, but not grim. We get a full picture. The subjects are tough, but the people in Kim's films have a softness that reveals itself to her camera. Nobody's perfect, and Kim shows that, and that's part of what makes her films so good. I saw an interview that Kim gave recently in which she described part of what was behind the heartbreaking scene in her most recent award-winning film, Dreamcatcher. The film follows Brenda, a former prostitute and drug addict in Chicago, who has dedicated her life to helping other sex workers. In the scene, Brenda is speaking to a group of high school students in some sort of after-school program, using her life story as a cautionary tale, she says, to hopefully save these young women from a similar fate of exploitation. So Brenda is doing a dialogue, and she asks each woman in the group, has anyone experienced abuse? And to Brenda's surprise, you see unfold on the camera, each young woman, one by one, tells her story of having experienced sexual abuse. One girl was only 8 years old when it happened. Each of these young women spoke up, even though Kim was there with her camera, because she had gained their trust. And because Kim said in the interview, quote, "It was the first time that people were really listening to them." So thank you, Kim, for listening and bringing this story and so many others to us, so artfully told with a deep sense of humanity and female empowerment in the harshest of circumstances. Your works are jewels of observational filmmaking, and it is my distinct honor to present you with this award named after my father-in-law and his filmmaking partner of 50 years. Thank you so much.
Otherwise I'll just forget half the people and it'll be a mess. But so I remember that he said just now that films, documentary films were a delight to make, and they are a delight, but they're also really stressful and hell, aren't they? I mean, I know they are, because, lying in bed thinking, oh my God, how am I going to get a story and what's going to happen? And, all that sort of, and I keep thinking, on the next film, I'm not going to worry, it's no point in worrying, because if it all goes terribly bad and you don't get a film, then the worrying didn't help. But if you do worry, and it's just, but I always do, I just always go through these, like a month of absolute anguish and wish I was in a deli somewhere, or but it's also what we all do it for, those amazing moments like the one that you mentioned about the girls. And what actually happened was I talked to them and I told them my experience. And then they all went out and they were completely quiet and nobody said anything. I showed them a little bit of a film I made, Sisters and All, which I think is showing here. And then the next morning, that was the very first time I'd filmed them. So it was really, and I remember when I was filming them, it was so exciting. It was like, and I was kind of crying a bit, but I wasn't crying because I was upset. I was crying because I was so proud of them. And every single girl, of course they aren't all in the film, there's only 3 in the film, but every single girl had a story. The youngest one was 4, and then there was this one who talked like an old lady. She said, well, I was much older than the others when it happened to me. I was 14, and you think, wow, And so we were all the same. It happened to me, it happened to them, it happened to Brenda. We were all the same, and that was what the lovely feeling was. And I think that's why I loved filming Brenda. I'm just going to tell you one little story, because I know it's awful when people go on and on, but it was right towards the end of filming. We took our 8-year-old son, Jeremy, to play football. And I know you have this expression, soccer mums and soccer dads, and it's meant to mean quite posh people, isn't it? And they were all there with their cars, and it was in the suburbs, and there were these wonderful little kids playing football, and Brenda was there with her husband, and you know, and a woman with big hair and in a beautiful little attire came up, and Brenda's in her tracksuit. She looks pretty cool, but she's in her tracksuit, and the woman says to her, "Oh, Brenda, why are they filming you?" Because I'm filming Brenda. And Brenda could have said, you know, I go on the streets and I rescue sex workers. Or she could have said, I do an after school with at-risk girls. Because actually that thing that you talked about, where we filmed the girls, Brenda was saying, now look, I'm going to help you not have to have sex until you're ready. And they're all saying, hang on, it's way too late. We've been having sex, you know, being made to have sex for all our lives, really. So Brenda was very shocked and thought, why are they doing it on the first morning that they're making the film? And it was for that very reason, that they'd all told people and nobody had listened, or they'd been angry, or, you know, it had all gone wrong. And here at last, there was a point to it. So, or she could have said, you know, I work in a jail, which she does, but she didn't. She leant across the car and she said, do you know what, I was a prostitute for 25 years. And I loved that in her, because the woman went, woo. You know, the woman didn't quite know how to handle it, because it wasn't really, it was like too much information, do you know what I mean? It wasn't really what she wanted. But that's what I love about people like Brenda, and that's why I think this is for people like her, you know, which none of us would be able to make films if it wasn't for people like Brenda, who take us totally into their lives and let us film them on it when she gets up in the morning, she's in bed, who don't mind if you go in the loo when she's putting her face on, who don't have any sense that they're trying to pretend to anything other than they are. And that's what I loved about Brenda. She, you know, she says, I'll always be in recovery. I'll always be an ex-prostitute. And she's not ashamed, and she teaches us not to be ashamed. And that's one of the things I learned from her, that all of us, every single person in this room in one way or another, well, we're all survivors of childhood, which I think on the whole is pretty hell, on the whole, for most people. Even people that have sort of nice parents or happy childhoods, you all get that weird feeling of quite not knowing what's going on, don't we? And a bit vulnerable, and that everyone else seems to know what's happening and we don't. There's a lovely thing Terry Pratchett said just before he died. He said, all my life I feel like I've been in a movie and I missed the first reel. But I think that's what being a kid's like, but I've never really managed to not feel like that. So, but I'm sure, I think we make films, don't we, because we don't really fit in. I think that's why we make films. And also because we're nosy. And also, I think those are the reasons. And we're outsiders and we seek out other outsiders. And, you know, and that's where we feel at home. I think the only time we really feel at home is when we're making these films that are also hell to make. So it's a weird job, really. But I'm so grateful to this. Thank you so much. And you just reminded me, I thought, primary, oh my God, primary, that's the person. So I'm really honoured to accept this, thank you. And I'm sitting next to Fred Wiseman.